Welcome to the fastest stop in town. Today on Masechtas Sotah Daf Chav Tes. We are going to begin on Chav Tes Amud Aleph, about 12 lines from the top. Rav Gidol Marav Davar Sheish Bo Das Lishoyel. If you have a situation where there's a suffix, which we learned about yesterday, that we actually derived from a sotah, that if there is someone to ask, that's when we apply this din of suffix b'rshus hayachid sveiko tame, because that is the situation of a sotah. A sotah secludes herself with another man, which is a rishus yachid, and there is someone to ask. However, as we learn, when it comes to tumas sheretz, if there's a suffix and there's no one to ask, so then we don't apply this din because it has to be similar to the din of a sotah. So the truth is, we've learned this out elsewhere, not just from Sotah. Davar sheish bo das lishol, the ein bo das lishol, mahaikra nafka. We actually learned that from a different pasuk. When it comes to kachim, habasar sheyiga b'chol tami lo yachel. So if you have meat that asher yiga, which is touched by anyone or anything that was tame, lo yachel, which means if you know for certain that this meat was touched, so then you're not allowed to eat it because it's definitely tamei. So in this we make a diak. Vaday tamehu yachel. That's only because you know for sure that it was touched. Mashma hasafik tamei, v'safik tahar yachel. In the situation where you're not sure, where there's a doubt, was this thing touched or not, then you could eat it. Ema seifa, but look at the end of the pasuk. B'habasar kol tahar yachel basar. It says the basar of anything which is tar you could eat. The vadi tarhu diachal basar. Hasavik tami savik tar lo yochal. It's mashma over here, the opposite. It's only that you're allowed to eat it when you know for sure that it's fine. Mashma in the case of a suffix, you're not allowed to eat. So it's an absolute steer in the psukim. El walav shemamina. The fact that we have this, we can derive. It depends on the situation. Kan sheish bodas lishael, kan she'in bodas lishael. So, just like the case of a sotah over here, if there's someone to ask, that's when we say, even by a case of a suffix, it's tameh. However, if there's no one there to ask, so then we say that the din is not that way. Okay, so the question is, why then do we need to learn this out from sotah, if we already learned it out from kachim? The Israch, the Rav Gidol, Marav Israch, Lemigma Masaita. You learn out the same din from these two cases because each one teaches us something unique. And this is question 5 and TB 10. Dim Rav Haba Mina Ben Brishos Yachid Ben Brishos Harabim. Because the whole din of Tumah could take place in private. It could take place in Rishos Harabim. And so you would think that there's no distinction between Brishus Harabim and Brishus Yachid. The only distinction is Dafka Das Lishoel, Israel Chamigma Masaita. And therefore we learn out from Sotah that this din of suffix is on, that suffix Toma is Dafka Brishus Yachid. Ve'im Masaita, if you don't learn out from Sotah, Habamina Adi Ika Das Noigea Umagia, Sricha. So it says Rashi, B'matamba v'nitba kisaita di'esh ba das. You have her das, the woman is there. V'yesh das beboil, and him, hamatama, the one who's going to who's causing all these problems. So you would think, kivan di'esh bo das b'zeh nitba of a matama will be inan das. So the whole point is that if you only learn from Sotah, you would think that you have to have das on both sides. However, when it comes to kanshim, so maybe in that situation we don't apply this din because das lishoel needs to be das of the one who is becoming tameh, the one who is making that person tameh, which would be a problem if we're dealing with the sheretz, because the sheretz itself, even if there was someone there, but the thing itself is not capable to be asked a question. That's why it's not necessary they have to have both elements, just as long as you have anyone there that is capable to answer a question. So, as we mentioned in our Mishnah, in our lengthy Mishnah, which introduced this parak, Boba Yoim, this is referring to the days of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, who was appointed as Nasi, who took over from Rabbi Gamliel. So it says that one of the things that was derived was klicheres ashayipol mehem el toichoi. We have a klicheres, and you have a sheretz that falls into the kli. Now, the sheretz is an avatoma, and the kli is a rishon. Kol asher b'tocho yitma. So anything in it is tameh, which means that the food becomes a sheni l'toma. Einu oimer tameh el yitma l'tameh cherem liman al kikar sheni shematamas ashlishi. So actually, we went out from here that not only is it shaykh to get to a sheni l'toma, but even to a shlishi l'toma, which typically we understand that oichon umash can only stop at the sheni level, but it cannot become a shlishi. However, that exception is made when it comes to truma that can even be on a shlishi level, or kodshim, in which can go to a revi level. So with that said, let's continue with the Gemara. So from the fact the pasuk the ein lo this pasuk, so lama tameh. So why is this person tameh? Where is the source of the halacha of shlishi by truma? So look at Rashi. If there's no pasuk in the Torah, lamahu tameh b'truma. Rav Yochanan the Kemer asid dor acher l'taharai, because the Mishnah later on said that a future generation is going to come to Mimataret. Abuhu hayamatamo. You're making it tameh. So the question is, if there's no pasuk, so then how could he say it's tameh on a shlishi level? How could truma become tameh on a shlishi level? Or maybe hudam rav minatara ein lo. Minatara, you're right, there's no pasuk to support it. Within Kavachaimer Yeshul, however, there's a Kavachaimer that will show that truma does become tameh on a shlishi level. Umat tful yoim. So you have a person who's a tful yoim, which the sun has not yet set. So in that state, shemuter b'chulin, he's only allowed to eat chulin, paisel b'truma. We know that, as the very first mission Brachos says, Mishash HaKonim nechnas lechem b'trumas, states like you have to wait until sunset for the Kohen who it was tameh to be able to eat truma. Now he can't eat truma if it's still daytime, but of course he's allowed to eat chulin. That's not a problem. However, he's not allowed to eat truma. So kikar sheni, if you have bread which is on the sheni level, shapaisel b'chulin, that would pasel chulin enudin shiasa shlishi b'truma. So certainly you could make bread or truma into a shlishi. Says Rashi, Tlasik Kriksivi. There's three psukim. Tavel b'oila mutter l'chulin meiser. If let's say a person was tavel, it's basically three steps. You went to the mikvah, and you came out. So you're allowed to eat chulin, and you're also allowed to have meiser. Here, shim shoycha b'truma. Once the sun sets, you can eat truma. However, you're mechusiki purim. Hevi kaparaso batuma shehibas carbon mutter b'kachim. The next day, the 8th day, you bring your carbon, then you can eat kachim. So says Rashi, Kikar sheni shepasa b'chulin k'neksiv kol asher b'tzaycha yitma. We said that anything, if you have a sheretz that went into this klicheres, it becomes tameh. So chulin u'truma kachim b'mashma. Now this doesn't say what it's referring to, what food it is. So it could be referring to even chulin, truma and kachim. Dinu sh'yasa shlishi b'truma. So it must be that this food is even talking about chulin. But dayoi, so therefore what do we say? So therefore we say that so too it must be, if it can become, chulin can become a sheni, then certainly truma should become a shlishi. But dayoi, because why? We see in this Kavachaimer that chulin were more lenient than truma. Chulin you could eat when you are, you haven't achieved Erev Shemesh, but you can't eat truma. You can't eat truma yet. So it must be chulin were more lenient than truma. So too when it comes to chulin, which becomes a sheni, so truma must become a shlishi. In fact, Rashi, we always say dayoi on a Kavachaimer. The dayo lekel meimer, the im kain batal Kavachaimer. The truth is, normally we say dayoi, dayo v'minlias kanadin, So therefore, because of that, the Kal V'chomer can only go up until where you learn up from. But if you say Dayai, then there's no Kal V'chomer at all. So the only time we say Dayai is if there's still a Kal V'chomer. We just don't go too far in the Kal V'chomer. However, if Dayai will destroy the entire Kal V'chomer, we don't say Dayai. That's the important klal that Rashi explains. Because the pasuk clearly says that food, just like Truma and Chulin alike, can become a sheni. So the Kal V'chomer isn't teaching anything about Truma becoming a sheni. We already know that. We already know Chulin can become a sheni. So the Kal V'chomer is telling you that Truma can become a shlishi. Whenever you remove a Kal V'chomer, as the Gemara in Baba Kama says, we don't apply dayai. Okay. So that's the Kal V'chomer. So let's see it one more time. Matful yoim shemot b'chulin pasal b'truma. So kikar sheni shepasal b'chulin then shiasa shlish b'truma. So yichel meprach malot full yoim shchein avatoma. Yeah, but by the case of the person full yoim, maybe that's why he makes truma pasal, since he could be chomer, as he may be an avatoma. Says Rashi, Shchein avatoma could gain tummy mace, ozava, motzar, shein, b'tumas and avos. So this tvul yom, maybe the reason why we're saying this whole din is why there's a problem with the truma is just because he's an avatoma. So because of that, maybe that's the reason why we're strict when it comes to truma. But lav dafka, should we then therefore learn that so too when it comes to truma should become a shlish l'tuma? Maybe not. So Teisi, so the Gemara says, as we continue Chav Testament Beis, mitzvul yom desheretz. What does that mean? So says Taisus, Adam shenaga b'sheretz. The person touches the sheretz, which the sheretz is a rishon, is an avatoma rather, and you touching it become a rishon. Rishon l'tuma hoya. So you become a rishon. V'lo avatoma. You're not an av. You're a rishon now. V'chitaval, and when you went to the mikveh, hotul chulin v'asul l'truma. So now what we're saying, and actually this is actually also Rashi. Whoops. Okay, there's no Taisus over here. So that's actually Rashi says. So this is what is coming to tell you, this din, that we're not talking about a person's avatoma, person's rishon l'toma. So maltful yoim desheretz shechein b'mino avatoma. Okay, it's true that we're talking about the person is a rishon, but the min, the item itself, the sheretz in itself, is an avatoma. Says Rashi, if it touches this vessel, o adam zeb meis nasa avatoma, o tama adam kelim, terme ba'oichel shenu nasa avatoma, afil alidei meis. So food could never get to the level of an av, even if it touches a mace. If food touches a mace, the food doesn't become an avatoma. Only an adam and kalim could become. That could happen. Okay, why? Because adam and kalim can become tahor through a mikvah, so they could potentially be an av. So you can't use this Kal V'chomer. So where it says, okay, mal kli cheres shechein matama. So kli cheres yechiach. So kli cheres will disprove you. Why? It says Rashi, she'en b'mino avatoma, because the kli cheres cannot become an avatoma. We're not talking about a sheretz, because then in itself is shaykh to become an avatoma. Yeah, but so how about if we're doing a cheres? Kli cheres can only get to the level of a rishon. She'en b'mino avatoma umatam es truma kashu rishon. But if the kli is a rishon, it can make other things into a sheni. So mal kli cheres shechein matama ma'avirai. Maybe we're more strict when it comes to the kli cheres, because even in the airspace, even if the sheretz didn't touch the kli, just going inside the kli, its airspace is matama. So maybe we're strict by kli cheres. That we don't have such a din, the chayzer din, or rizeh. So each of them have different characteristics. However, however, both of them are mutter in chulin, but you cannot eat truma. So kol shekain Kikar sheni shepas b'chulin the place of betruma. So therefore, l'chayra, we can again learn out from this mamatzinu, the sana shava, the din of truma to a shlishi. V'dor acher parich malot sada shoshem b'shachen yesh ben sad chomer. So you can say, if we're talking about a tefillah mesheretz, or if we're talking about a kli cheres, both of them are sad chomer. Either that mina is avatoma, or the kli cheres is matam even ma'virai. So Rav Yochanan Zakkai sad chomer loy parich. He feels that you can't ask such a question. Says Rashi, Luchashuli Pircha, Hoyel Ein Chaymer B'Shneim Shavet. They're not equal, so even though each one has a sad chomer, you can really say that about almost any cow, any sad shava. Sheyesh Behem sad chomer. So it's an interesting pircha in general. Why would that be a pircha? Because most of the time that would slug up the entirety of any sad shava. Of any sada shava. So Tanya Rav Yosi Menayin Ravi B'Kodesh Paisel. So that is how we established about a shlishi for truma through a sada shava. So how do we know the next level that kodesh becomes paisel on a Ravi level? V'dinhu ma mechusik kipurim shemota b'truma paisel b'kodesh. So here, instead of us talking about truma, which we said we learned out from the original Kabbalah that chulin is zalati chulin can't eat truma because that was before the sun set. Now the sun has set. It's already Seitzah Kachavim, but he's a mechusar kippurim. He hasn't brought karbanos the next day, so he's allowed to eat truma. He's allowed to eat kachim. So we already see that we're more strict when it comes to kachim. So because of that, by mechusar kippurim shemata b'truma paisa b'kaidish shlishi shepasa b'truma and shehu shiasa ravi b'kaidish. So since truma is a shlishi, must be that kaidish is ravi. V'mani shlishi l'kaidish min Torah, and we're not shlishi. Kaidish becomes shlishi from the Torah. Rabbi Mikabel Chaimer. So how do we see that by kaidish? Shlishi l'kaidish min Torah minalin techsiv v'abasar sheyiga b'chol tamei. When it comes to anything which is meat, you should not touch anything which is tamei, and if it does, well, you're not to eat it. Milu askinan. It must be that what is the pasuk talking about? The nug masheni, that it was touched on a sheni level and it became a shlishi. V'yam rachman lo yachal revi, and it's saying you're not allowed to eat. You're not allowed to eat. So what is this? We're talking about a case where it was a shlishi. The bread is a sheni, and now the basar that touches it becomes a shlishi by kaidish. So now we have a pasuk to teach you a shlishi, and therefore the Ravi is makabel chaymer kinei amron, as we said before. Okay, question 6. Ma'u kabel chaymer Rav Yosi the elf the shlishi paisel b'kodesh. So how do we know that shlishi is paisel b'kodesh? Kabel chaymer shlishi. The shlishi paisel b'kodesh, not Ravi. Okay, so he says, "Ma mechusar kippurim shemot b'truma paisel b'kodesh." Ma mechusar kippurim. Maybe I didn't finish this. Ma mechusar kippurim shemot b'truma paisel b'kodesh. Now to eat kodesh. Shlishi she paisel b'truma and then she asked Ravi b'kodesh. Okay, all right. I'm not sure why it says the old shlishi paisel b'kodesh. Okay, so that's the pasuk teaches us again. Kodesh is tell me on a shlishi level. Then the kabel chaymer from mechusar kippurim teaches us that kodesh could also become Talmud Ravi level. Okay. Ravi mekabel chaymer could amran. Rav Yochanan tam Rabbi eni yodea mahu. This his reason I understand. Shar tshuvasa b'tzidoi oichel haba machmas tvul yoim yoichiach. Food that comes from a tvul yoim, again a tvul yoim, he went into the mikveh and he's waiting to be able to have the sunset. Shepaisel b'truma. We know at that time, since the sun is not yet, he's not to eat truma. Venu oiser Ravi b'kodesh, and it has not become Ravi b'kodesh. This time the Abba Shol Omer Tful Yoim. When it comes to a Tful Yoim, Tchila l'kodesh. He has the status of a rishon l'tuma when it comes to kodesh, with tamish shnayim lisol echad, which means he could tummy 2 times. If, in fact, a tful yoim is considered to be a rishon l'tuma, so he can go sheni and shlishi, which is l'tamish shnayim, and poisel echad. Revi is poisel, because the difference between being latam to live soil, you become tame, or it becomes tame, but it can't be matama other things. So according to the Shita, Abba Shol is of the opinion that Tful Yaim is considered to be like a Rishon L'Toma. Rameir, Oimer Matama Echad Upoisel Echad. Rameir says he's only like a Sheni L'Toma, so, but he could passel to a Revi level, as we're going to see. The Chachamim Oimrim Kashem Shepoisel Oichle Truma Umashke Truma. Just like he can poisel oichle truma and mashke truma, so how can he poisel it? Because he's a sheni, so therefore you can make truma poisel into a shlishi. Kach poisel oichle kodesh umashke kodesh, only onto the shlishi, but not onto the revi level. So mask Rav Papa Mamad Rav Yossi Rabbanon Svirle. How do he holds like the Rabbanon? Dilma Kabashol Svirle. Maybe he holds like Abashol, and he does make Revi by Kodesh. So therefore it's no question. So there's no 1 second. It can't be like Abashol. If he did hold like him, Svirle, Lace il Revi by Kodesh, let the Revi of Kodesh come, why did he bring the Kavachaymer from Mechusik Yipporim, learn straight from Abashol? Ma oichel haba makmas tvul yoim. When it comes to food that comes from tvul yoim, the tvul yoim gufa mutter b'chulin. He himself is allowed to eat chulin. Amrit ois revi b'kaidish. So oichel shlishi haba makmas sheni, the sheni gufi aser b'chulin. So a shlishi that comes because of a sheni, that the sheni itself is aser in chulin. In a din shiaser revi b'kaidish. Why didn't he learn the din that a shlishi could make revi poisel by Kachim? Learn it from here, not from Mechusik Yipporim. So it must be he holds like the Chachamim. The Chitema Mishav Dikol Merfach Malat Tvul Yam Shechein Avatoma. It's an Avatoma, as we said before. So Tine Mechusik Yipporim V'lo Parche. We already brought up from Mechusik Yipporim that it's a Avatoma, and we didn't ask the question, and therefore because of that, again, that is how we're establishing this case. Adkan.